listening to the Picks from the Paddock Turf Talk podcast.
You are listening to the Picks from the Paddock podcast with myself, Rory Paddock, Chris Connolly. Becoming a bit of a regular fixture, we've got Matt, and we've got to welcome Luke to the show. How are we doing, chaps?
Good.
Evening.
Fantastic. We'll get straight into it. There's no avoiding it. There's no beating around the bush. The biggest talking point over the last week, all to do with elastic bands. It's been absolutely fantastic for racing PR. Yeah, everyone's been talking about it. It's an absolute nightmare. For those that don't know, I will come to you, Chris. Can you give us a bit of a rundown? I mean, to be honest with you, if you've not heard about it, you've been living under a rock. But, you know, the abridged version.
Well, we know what happens, don't we? Apparently, he used his elastic bands to keep his kit together in his bag. He pulled the whip out. A couple of the bands stayed on the end of the whip. The horse he was riding was back from 100 to 1 down to 10 to 1. It pissed up. The horse was left with marks. He got a 7-day ban for altering his whip, and there's been hell on ever since, and that's the long and short of it, to be fair.
I'll come to you, Matt. Your initial thoughts when you first heard about it. Obviously, there's photographic evidence, so it's there. It's for all to see, and it's very damning. It's very obvious. He's obviously said he's come out. The jockey said, "Oh, it was a mistake." Now, don't get me wrong. I'm of the belief that obviously there's, you know, people make mistakes, things do happen. But where along that line do you sort of do you perhaps fall with this? You know, is it genuine mistake being at 0 or blatant obvious cheating? Let's call it what it is at number 10.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's a bit bizarre because when you weigh out, you put your skull cap and your whip on the clerk of the scales desk. Likewise, when you weigh in, those items of equipment are usually inspected. So I find it hard to believe that, you know, that went unnoticed. I think if the horse had finished last, you know, might even not even got a mention. But if you combine the fact that obviously the elastic bands were on the whip, combine that with the fact that the horse was gambled, combine that with the fact that the horse was left marked, you can only put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4, really. I mean, it's a bit sad, all in all, you know. No one likes to see it in racing, but unfortunately we know these things go on now and again, and, you know, I think it's it's a sad case of affairs, really. I don't think there's any way of getting around it. You know, it could be a genuine mistake, in which case I'm doing everyone an injustice. But it just doesn't look like that from the outside, does it?
No, I mean I agree with you. You know, it's mistakes do happen. Fine, I get it. But when there's so many things that point towards it, you know, all right, fine, it was a mistake. However, there was a gamble. However, it won. However, X, Y, Z, and it, you know, like anything, you end up building a case and. If there's enough things that point towards a guilty verdict, then 9 times out of 10 it tends to be a guilty verdict. Chris, I know that there was mention of, and correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of like a change of ownership of the horse as well. Is that right?
Well, there's been questions marks around this about whether Danny Brock himself purchased this horse or somebody purchased it on the back of his advice. We know that he's been involved in this sort of thing before. I don't think this looks very good for him when you consider he cries the poor tale. He also rode through the boycott on the all-weather tracks earlier in the season. So, you know, his character was probably questionable, certainly from within, you know, from the boycott situation. And, you know, just the welfare issue of marking a horse doesn't look good. Yeah, I think we need to move on, but not forget what's happened. And for as easy it is to turn on Danny Brock, and it is, you know, there are plenty of others in similar situations who would probably do the same. So, you know, you can make your own judgments on what you think of Danny. I think he's been punished. I think we can move on now from it. There's no point in dwelling on it. It's finished.
Luke, I want to leave you with the last word. Obviously, Danny Brock's been given a 7-day ban. There's been a massive amount of outrage in terms of whether or not the punishment fits the crime. Where do you kind of stand on that?
Well, I mean, a lot of people get bigger fines and bigger punishments for doing a lot less worse. You know, if you know what I mean. You know, I think like Chris has said that, you know, I think it's been drawn out and made the point. You know, and like I said, in the day, welfare is a big thing nowadays. Everything's got to be very protective of the horses and looking after them, making them right. And then when you put marks on horses and things like that, it doesn't look very good for the sport itself, does it? So, yeah, like you said, I think unfortunately, hopefully it doesn't happen again. I mean, whether it will or not, we don't know, but whether it goes on. But hopefully, like you said, it's draw a line under it, and hopefully lessons have been learned from this. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that kind of struck me is in other sports, especially football, players or managers or even referees, any sort of official or anyone that's involved in the sport can be found guilty of bringing the sport into disrepute. Do you think there'd be room, and I'm going to come to you with Matt, do you think there'd be room to have something similar implemented in racing? I mean, let's be honest, I'm in the belief that a 7-day ban is a bit ridiculous, personally, for what he's done. But do you think there'd be grounds to bring in something like this into the sport, or would that just be too hard to police? Would it just be a bit of a nonsense, really?
Well, I think you just judge these things on what you see and what the evidence is, don't you? And I think, I think ultimately, I think bans are probably more, particularly from a jockey's point of view, I think bans are more, what's the word? It's probably more harmful for a jockey, because the one thing that jockeys don't like doing is losing rights to other jockeys. And if you're out of the loop for any particular time and you start losing connections and mounts and then watching those horses win and then those jockeys retain those mounts, that hurts more than any fine, I think, particularly the higher up the ladder you are. So I think fines are all well and good, but I think the penalties in terms of bans probably need to be a bit harsher. So it definitely makes people think twice before they think about doing anything like this.
And just with a sort of quick nod of the head, a shout or a one-word answer, I'm going to come to all three of you. Well, actually, you know what? I can say this, and I take it all three of you feel he is guilty. There's no one on this call or on this podcast at the moment that thinks that he has no blame.
Guilty as sin.
There we go, and I'll take your two silences in agreement. One last thing, and we'll leave it where it perhaps deserves to be. I'm going to give you three the powers of the BHA, of the stewards, as it were. If you're looking at the incident with everything that you know about it, taking everything into consideration, what do you think would have been a fair punishment for such a crime? I'll come to you, Chris. Keep it short and sweet. If you were making that decision, what would you have capped him with?
Well, if you want to look at non-triers, usually around 15 to 21 days or 10 to 21 days, I think 21 days would have been a sufficient ban.
Luke?
Yeah, 14 to 21 days, and obviously a bigger fine, probably, hitting his pocket, at the end of the day.
And Matt?
Well, I mean, this is a rare instance where someone's got punished for actually really trying, albeit outside of the rule book. So, I mean, 3 months. 3 months would do for me.
See, I'm with you, Matt. I mean, I don't know if you're joking, but I'm so shocked at you, Mr. Connolly, that just the 21 days. Really? You tend to be the grumpy, harsh one. What's happened to you?
Well, if that's the sort of punishment a jockey gets for not trying to win a race, what are you supposed to do when they're trying to win a race? It's just, I've never heard anything like this in my life, putting elastic bands on whips, and whether he meant to do it or not, at least he was actually trying to win the race.
Bloody hell, when did you become the good cop? Christ. Anyway, right, moving on, chaps. Obviously, aside from this, we saw some fantastic racing over the weekend. Although it pains me to say it, I've got to give a certain Mr. Polly a 10-ton of credit for tipping 4 winners on our podcast. So if any of you listened, what was it? It came to over a 200 to 1 4-timer. That included the likes of Reserve Tank. Give me a copper. Who else won? Remind me.
Riders on the Storm.
Yeah.
Riders on the Storm, my nap for the Ipswich Star in the race and post-naps table.
Yeah. And
you're welcome.
What was the other horse? The odds-on shot that won?
Boozle Raffles.
That's the one.
Who was incredibly unimpressive.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll go, woo, I gave a forecast, but, anyway. And well done, Chris, you gave a winner as well. You also gave a place, I think, or did I give a place? One of the two. But yeah, well done, Matt. If you got on, folks, then, he accepts payments in brown envelopes or in the version of beer. So we'll forward on Matt's details and you can thank him personally. You've touched upon it, Matt. We ended up with 2 short prize winners on the day in the form of Reserve Tank and Fusel Raffles. You've obviously let it know what you think of Fusel Raffles, but Reserve Tank, impressive enough, and where do you go from here?
Reserve Tank. I think Robbie Power summed it up after the race pretty much. He said he'd probably be better off on a sounder surface, which, ties in with his improved form in the spring of last season. So it's hard to crab him if he generally didn't enjoy that surface. I just didn't get the pulse racing for me. He went wide. He tried to pick the better ground, and then ultimately you could see, he got the race in safekeeping, turning in bar an accident, and he jumped the last few fences fine, but it certainly wasn't exhilarating. He just got the job done, basically. Probably 3 miles on decent ground is going to be his thing, and as Robbie Power alluded to in his post-race interview, that they might give him one more run and then put him away for a spring campaign, possibly Cheltenham, Aintree and Punchestown. I wouldn't be that surprised if he gave Cheltenham a swerve again and maybe just aimed it like he did last year at Aintree and Punchestown. But he's obviously a horse with lots of talent and a huge amount of potential, but he's probably still a work in progress. To be honest, he's still quite a young, immature, inexperienced horse. He got the job done, but it certainly wasn't breathtaking, was it?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, that's why I went against him when we did our sort of tipping podcast last week. Just from when I saw him at Chepstow, albeit he didn't win a 3-runner race. In fairness, he ran well enough, but I just wasn't impressed. And the same thing happened this weekend. He did what he had to do, but like you said, it wasn't. You didn't. Sometimes you'll see a horse win a race on a Saturday, and you'll start, especially a young horse, and you'll start hearing some people throw out comparisons to ridiculous comparisons to all-time greats and stuff. But certainly none of that, even from the most die-hard and perhaps blinkered National Hunt fan. You didn't hear anything of that sort of ilk. Maybe I'm being a bit unkind, but it just seemed a bit, to sum it up in a word, meh. Chris, if you were Connections, what would you think you'd be your sort of main target for a horse like that?
I'd be avoiding Cheltenham for a start, Rory. He looked, to be fair, he was impressive enough, but he was workmanlike, weren't he? I think around 5 out, he was actually he looked like he got caught for a little bit of toe, so maybe he wants further. He probably does. If you say run his no mug, it weren't a bad performance from Reserve Tank or anything like that. I mean, he jumped quite well and he had it in safekeeping, from at least 3 out. I mean, he was impressive to a point without ever. He just didn't look like the demolition job you thought he might produce. And this was a great tour race. Where you go from here, I have no idea. I would imagine they'll be looking perhaps at Kempton. I don't know, but it was a decent start. It was a decent effort when you look at his loss in 3-runner race the time before. So he's got plenty of time to improve, and he probably will improve, but he's going to have to.
Yeah, exactly. I'll come on to you, Luke. Another odds-on winner that day. Matt's obviously alluded to the fact that it wasn't very impressive. It was only a 3/4 of a length win for Fusel Raffles in the 3 o'clock. It was the Unibet Elite hurdle. It was a Grade 2 hurdle. The horse went off at 4-7. All right, Henderson's charge won, but it had to be driven out to get there. Horse I thought it'd go close, Grand Sankey did, and that was my forecast, but didn't really run as a 7-4 run shot should. A lot of people were hyping this horse up big time before the race. Any excuses from the run, Luke, or?
No, I think. Well, you could say again, his first time out, wasn't he? So I mean, there's always an element of that. I mean, Henderson did say afterwards that he was a bit worried. He didn't do much work with him, I don't think, and he got the job done. But I mean, I mean, I was amazed afterwards that the prices were coming down. I can't remember what it was for Cheltenham. What race would be the champion hurdle? They were putting out prices for that already and shortening it. And it's like just on the basis of one run. I mean, it was alluded that sometimes horses get like you said, the horses win one race and on a Saturday it's like the price will shoot down and they think these horses it could be a potential superstar. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it jumped its hurdles nicely, quickly, and it won at the end of the day. It beat Grand Stance. He's not exactly a rubbish horse, is it? So I mean, got the job done. I think they're a little bit harsh in saying he was a bit but he said he won, and I'm sure he'll be better for it next time. Wherever he goes next, I don't know. But
yeah. I mean, touching upon that, and I'll come to you, Matt, with this current betting for the champion hurdle sees Fusel Raffles joint fifth favourite at 16-1 behind the likes of Classical Dream, Bouvedere, Pentland Hills, and Willie Mullins' Soldier. Is actually shorter than Benny de Dieu, shorter than Fekir Duderie, shorter than Melon.
It's a great price. Stop talking. 16-1 shot, Rory. This horse is a 4-year-old. He's bound to improve the run. Nicky Henderson said he was 3 weeks at least below being ready to see a race course. He's 4 years old. He's going to be 5 at Cheltenham. If you back him at this stage at 16-1, he won't be going to Kempton to take on Bouvedere. He'll be going somewhere else, so he's likely to be even shorter. You can back this horse now and cash out and make money. Guarantee he'll be shorter than 16-1 come March.
Will he even go, though? Do you reckon he lines up in the champion hurdle?
Well, I would have thought so. Where else are they going to go with him? He's not going to start chasing them. He's not going to go over 3 miles, is he? So it's highly likely to go in the champion hurdle. And, from a punting perspective, he's an ideal bet at 16-1. It's very unlikely you will lose money with this horse. You could cash out, I would have thought, if you take 16-1 now.
And Matt, seeing as though I asked you the question, your thoughts?
I think 16-1's about right at the moment. I think. You couldn't really move him in the market after that performance. I want to see him again, but I quote. I mean, who am I to tell Nicky Henderson how to train horses? But I quote Nicky Henderson after the race when he said this horse wasn't ready for a race course, which I found was a completely bizarre thing to say from someone who's been champion trainer and experienced trainer like Henderson is. But maybe I'm being a tad harsh, but they didn't go a gallop. There was only a small field. The Nichols horse, it was quite a quick horse. Those flat right-handed tracks suit him. I think he's a winner around Wincanton. Those sharp, flat right-handed tracks on decent ground. They absolutely cantered round, turned into he's still hard on the bridle, Grand Sancy coming into the straight. He's quick and going down to 2 out, which has caught Fusel Raffles flat-footed, and Jacob had to give him a couple of sharp reminders going to 2 out, and he got the job done in workmanlike fashion, but he'll undoubtedly come on a lot for that run, but I think he'll need to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, personally, if I had to pick a winner of the race, I understand what you're saying in terms of the value, and if it carries on, then yeah, it probably will be shorter than 16-1. But surely you can think of 4 or 5 horses that are more likely to win the race than that. Or
name them.
Bouvedere, Pentland Hills, Classical Dreams. I think there's a favourite.
How do you know these horses are going to improve, Rory? How do you know Classical Dream's going to... He's 72 favourite Classical Dream for the champion hurdle. How do you know he's going to turn up?
Yeah, no, but I'm saying in terms of what he's achieved so far, he merits a shot.
Fell in the champion hurdle last year. Fakir Duderies has gone over... He's going chasing. Mellon's gone chasing. Benny de Dieu, unlikely to run.
Lorena?
My ass.
Yeah, but that horse has achieved more than this horse. What I'm saying is, on form...
2 miles. At 2 miles, she's achieved more.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is backing Fusel Raffles on potential rather than what he's actually produced on the racecourse so far.
Yeah.
You know that even though Bouvedere's not getting any younger, he operates around there. He's a dual champion hurdle winner.
Pentland Hills has won around Cheltenham. The favourites won around Cheltenham.
It'd be a massive feat for Bouvedere to win 2 champion hurdles, lose one, and then regain it again. I mean, that would be a phenomenal achievement. And whether he's up to doing that is debatable, but I think based on pure form alone, I think 16 to 1's about right. But he's undoubtedly got potential, the horse, and like Chris says, if he goes and wins his next race impressively, wherever it is, and I don't know where they go next, the Christmas hurdle or something, I don't know, but he's undoubtedly going to be shorter than 16.
Moving on, chaps, we obviously saw great racing on Sunday over in Ireland. Again, a few odds-on winners. A lot of people are very, very impressed with Andy Dufresne. I even saw on social media people talking the second coming of Istabrack. Obviously, that's very premature, but how impressed were you, Chris?
Well, he was very impressive, weren't he? He absolutely bolted up. I think he won by 11 lengths or 12 lengths. The one bit of caution I would have with this horse is that he was given quite a soft lead from about the third, and he was always in command. It was very easy, but there was never really any sort of pressure on him. So it was very impressive. He's obviously a horse worth following. I mean, I've no idea which race he'll go to at the Cheltenham Festival. And another thing you would have to remember about this is that it was soft to heavy, but he did look like he had gears. I actually felt I think he definitely wants soft in the ground, which you probably get at Cheltenham. I think the softer the better for him as well. So very impressive horse, and he obviously a very good bumper horse as well. He won his one. I'll fuck that up myself. He won a 3-mile fucking point, didn't he?
Yeah, and that's why we have you on the show, Chris, for your wisdom, knowledge, and real understanding. So no, I wouldn't have known either, mate. Let's have a look. His form, he's got...
no, he won it down royal, didn't he?
Right, no, he did it, yeah. He won a flat, national flat race. Yeah. You were right. I mean, to be honest with you, he does have an entry around Christmas time at, at Fairy House. I mean, as it stands at the minute, there's about 30-odd runners, about 40, entrants into that. Obviously, there won't be that many. But, I mean, looking through the list of there, you've even got the likes of Abracadabra, who won on the same card. You've got the likes of, let's have a look, even Envoy Allen's entered. I mean, if some of the main protagonists end up running this race in December and over the sea in Fairy House, that could be an absolute fantastic novice hurdle, and could have massive implications to the festival. I'd love to see some of the entrants run, but you know what it's like. The likelihood is slinting on. Luke, obviously, Gordon Elliott's charge. Is it worth getting on board a hype train like this? I mean, obviously, I know that at the age of 5, he's only had 3 runs. If you include the point-to-point, but is this a train that you can be grabbing a ticket to jump ahead on, or are you a bit cautious with this?
Well, I think there's a lot to like from that performance. I mean, it's only the first time out, and he's. He said he's cruised along, but he didn't really have to push him too much, and he got, like Chris said, he got a bit of a soft lead. I mean, to be honest, Gordon Elliott, you could pick a few of them that were novice hurdles. He's got quite a few, but he's lucky to have quite a few. Abracadabras as well. I think again, it's too early at the moment to jump on these. I mean, we won't know where he's going to go at Cheltenham. Obviously, that's a place that he will go, but in terms of we don't know which race he's going to go. It's just too early. I'd like to see him run at Christmas, and then really you can get a good idea then, a good picture then. I'm sure there'll be harder challenges ahead, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes next. The same with Abracadabras and everyone's like Envoy Allen as well. He's got a good string of hurdlers. Yeah.
On the whole grand scheme of things, it's not bad being Gordon Elliott, I guess.
No, it's not. Well, it's interesting.
It's really slim pickings, isn't it, with his yard?
Well, it's interesting to see where they all go, because the owners will want to go. They're all different owners, aren't they? They're all different. So it's difficult to please and where they go and which route they take. It's interesting.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, also on the card as well, we saw the likes of Mellon and Fakir Duderay start their career over bigger obstacles. Matt, you see the race, and any thoughts on those two as prospective chasers going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fakir Duderay was incredibly impressive. He jumped like an old hand. He's only a 4-year-old, incredibly. Jumped like an absolute stag, travelled. he was sent on a long way from home. Which when I was actually watching the race live, I thought, wow, he's got a Grade 1 performer just sat in behind him there, and like absolute confidence in the horse. And so it proved. He galloped strongly up the stiff Navan Hill, and it was an incredibly impressive performance. So I think he could even get a little bit further. I mean, probably at the Arkle at the moment would be the first port of call, and maybe even get a little bit further the way he hit the line there over a very stiff 2 miles. But Mellon didn't do anything wrong, but I think he's just one of those horses where he'll probably always find one. He'll win his novice chasers, but I think probably when he comes up against a decent field of Grade 1 horses, he'll be competitive without winning too many. So yeah, Fakir Duderie was mightily impressive. He was a horse I liked last year, and I think he'll go on to bigger and better things. But just going back to the Gordon Elliott situation, I think we all know that those horses have got engines. That was why they were purchased for mega money after their point-to-point victories. He's got another horse, so I'm not sure what's happened to him. But Cheveley Park have also got Malone Road, which is an interesting horse. These are big, young, raw horses, and they're certainly not going to be pushing any buttons at the moment. As I said, we know they've got big engines. A lot of money paid for them out of the pointing field. They did well in their bumpers, and they'll come along steadily. And hopefully by Cheltenham time they'll be a little bit more battle hardened and ready to go. I could see Envoy Allen running in the 2 mile 5. Novice, which I think is the Ballymore. I think Andy Dufresne is a 3 mile chaser in the making. He'll run in the 3 mile novice, and it'd be quite a nice problem to have owning some of those horses or training some of those horses even.
Definitely. And Chris, I'll come to you with the last sort of thought on the weekend's action. Apples Jade went off at 4-1 on, came second behind Bacardi's. I remember this time last year, and everyone was basically saying that Apple Jade is the second coming. She's the next best thing. She's an absolute superstar. She's going to be dominant for years to come. She's going to win the champion hurdle. She's going to do X, Y, and Z. Would you possibly say that she's the most... overhyped probably isn't the right word, because she has achieved a fair bit more than most, but perhaps the most disappointing compared to, when you compare it, when you level it off against the amount of talk and amount of hype around her.
Yeah, well,
that we've seen in a long time anyway.
She's been very disappointing before at Cheltenham, Rory. Even when she's won at Cheltenham, she seemed to have underperformed, so to speak. She was desperately disappointing yesterday. I mean, to be beaten by Bacardi's is not too shameful, but to be beaten by 10 lengths by him, I mean, Bacardi's is a very good horse, but he's nowhere near, he's just not a Grade 1 level hurdler, certainly not at around 2.5 mile. I mean, this is a horse that finished 6th in last season's Stayers. On the form book, he had an awful lot to find with her, and she's not been the same horse since last season. She flopped at Cheltenham, she was beaten at Aintree, and then she was beaten at Punchestown convincingly, and she was absolutely tonked at Punchestown. She's won a lot of egg and spoon Grade 1 races. Fair enough, she might have beaten a couple of decent horses on the day, but usually she just goes from the front and is left alone, and they never managed to reel her in. I think the secret's been out with her for a while now, especially at Cheltenham. Just don't give her an easy lead, and she seems to sulk. So, her reputation right now is in tatters, but it wouldn't totally surprise me if she bounced back in Ireland and won a Grade 1. However, coming to the Cheltenham Festival, you would lay her all day in the champion hurdle, and, she has obviously not lived up to the hype she was receiving last season.
Luke, where do you even go with her? Do you just carry on with the same sort of campaign as she had last year, or would you try something different?
Oh, it's a tough one, isn't it? Well, I mean, it all worked last year until Cheltenham, didn't it? So, I mean, was it just it was just beaten by a better horse on the day yesterday, and she maybe she wasn't as fit. Perhaps, you don't really know. There's a few question marks already. But, again, it's one bad run at the start of the season. It's the first run of the season. It's just interesting to see. Obviously, I think you'll be able to tell where she goes next. I mean, I assume she'll run in a month's time or so, or December time. So I don't know where she'll possibly go. But yeah, I think again, you just need to wait and see wait the next race and see what happens. I mean, I'd imagine Gordon will go the same route. I'd imagine, but I don't know.
Matt, do you think everyone's perhaps jumping the gun a bit and writing her off too quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're being a bit harsh here. I mean, she's a multiple Grade 1 winning mare. If she never run again, she's worth an absolute fortune. She's a top class mare. I mean, she's for me, she's right up there with the likes of Annie Power and mares like that. I think she's running all the big races. She's campaigned hard. She does it the hard way. She always does it on the front end. She guts out her races. I think they were pressurised into running her in the Champion Hurdle last year, which was a massive mistake because she's never a 2-miler in a month of Sundays. I think Bouva Dare had underachieved throughout the whole season, and they just sniffed an opportunity to pick up a Champion Hurdle in what was a particularly ordinary year, and it backfired spectacularly, just as it did with Lorena. And I think Willie Mullins had the same idea with Lorena. I think they thought it was a race that was there for the taking. And the bottom line is, you can't make 3-mile horses into 2-mile horses if they just literally haven't got the raw speed. So. And then she ran again after, and she was disappointing again. But I'd forgive her that because she had a tough old gig at Cheltenham, and like I said, I mean she doesn't owe anyone anything. She could happily go off to the paddocks now and have foals, and she's been an absolute superstar. And maybe they'll give her another run, and if she runs flat again, I could probably see that being the end of her career and off to the paddocks. She doesn't owe anyone anything, does she? She's been fantastic.
I mean, and I'll come to you with this, Chris. Final word on Apples Jade. Obviously, she's been a horse that's been a bit hard to place over the last year. I agree with Matt that 2 miles just isn't a trip. If you had to pinpoint a race for Cheltenham, if she even ended up at the festival, I'd take it would be the 3-mile mares hurdle. It'd be the...
Well, yeah, just go to the mares hurdle. It's an easy enough race to win, isn't it? She's won it before. Just touching on her being a 2-miler, Rory, she won the Irish champion over 2 miles last season at Leopardstown. She did so by 16 lengths. So for this talk of her not being a 2-miler, she's just not as good as people think she is. She's been beaten at 2-1, 5-6, 7-4, and 1-4 since.
So, do you reckon she'd have any sort of squeak in a stayers herd?
Well, yeah, she'd probably have a chance in the 3-mile division, but she has never run to her peak performances at Cheltenham, Rory. Her peak performances have always been in Ireland. A couple of years ago, I think she ran against Irvine and went life and death with him at Newcastle. I think she beat him by a short head. She's just not... I do agree to a point she's not a 2-miler, but I don't see her beating Paisley Park there in the stayers hurdle. I do think she'd win the mares hurdle, obviously, but I think she's overrated, and I think she's a victor. She's a victor of her circumstances. They give her an easy lead in Ireland, and most of the time she's winning 5, 6, 7, 8 runner races. So, you come to Cheltenham, and that's not what you're getting. Yeah,
all I want to say is 33-1 current price for us till at the stayers. Each way chance, maybe. Yeah, well, we'll see. A lot of time between now and then. But anyway, chaps, thank you very much for another great show. You have been listening to the Turf Talk podcast from picksfromthepaddock.co.uk. Remember to like us, follow us, jump on our social media, and stay tuned for later in the week for our Saturday preview.